So we're diving into this really fascinating idea. What if someone's life story was written down centuries, even thousands of years before they were even born? That's the claim we're looking at today, specifically about the life of Jesus of Nazareth and the ancient Hebrew scriptures.
I mean, it's a pretty bold claim, right? And it really sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. The big question is, could a person's life really be mapped out, detail by detail, hundreds of years in advance? Let's take a look at the blueprint that's presented.
All right, so where do we even begin? Well, the argument starts right at the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. We're talking the book of Genesis. This is supposed to be the first piece of the puzzle, the first thread in this incredible ancient tapestry.
And this first one is really the foundation for the whole thing. So way back in Genesis, you've got this kind of mysterious reference to a seed of a woman who's going to defeat a spiritual enemy. Fast forward hundreds of years, and the New Testament book of Galatians points to Jesus as being born of a woman, basically connecting the dots all the way back to that first promise. And this pattern, this prophecy and then its supposed fulfillment, is something we're going to see again and again.
Okay, so we start with this really broad, kind of vague promise. But from there, it's like the focus starts to get sharper and sharper. The prophecies allegedly start to zero in, moving from a general idea to pinpointing a very specific family line.
And you can really see this narrowing process play out over like 1,000 years. It kicks off around 2000 BC with a promise to Abraham. Then the line is traced through his son Isaac, then his grandson Jacob, and finally, around 1000 BC, it gets super specific. This person will be an heir to King David's throne. It's like a prophetic funnel, getting tighter and tighter with each generation.
So think about that. The blueprint has supposedly identified the who, the exact family tree. But then it takes another step. It shifts from who to where. The claim is that these ancient texts actually name the exact town where this person would be born.
And here it is. The prophet Micah, writing way back around 700 BC, calls it out by name. A ruler will come from the little town of Bethlehem. And of course, this is presented as a direct hit, with the Gospel of Luke describing Joseph and Mary heading to that exact town right before Jesus is born.
Now, this next one is probably one of the most famous prophecies of all. The prophet Isaiah writes, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son." And the connection made is to the Gospel of Luke, where the angel Gabriel delivers that exact same message to Mary. From this perspective, it's just another layer of incredible, almost unbelievable detail being added to this ancient blueprint.
Okay, so we've got ancestry, we've got the birthplace, we've got the circumstances of the birth, but the blueprint reportedly keeps going. It doesn't stop there. The next phase of predictions is said to lay out details of his public life, his ministry. So picture this. Isaiah talks about this voice crying in the wilderness, someone who's going to come first and prepare the way. Then centuries pass, and the Gospel of Luke points to John the Baptist, who is literally out preaching in the wilderness as the fulfillment of that prophecy, the guy who set the stage for Jesus' ministry.
And it gets even more specific, geographically. Isaiah prophesies about a great light shining in a region called Galilee of the Gentiles. And where does the Gospel of Matthew say Jesus kicked off his ministry? You guessed it, that exact area. So the argument is, even the map coordinates were part of this blueprint.
But this is where the story takes a much darker, much more dramatic turn. Because according to the source material, this blueprint wasn't just about a miraculous birth and a powerful ministry. It also included chillingly specific predictions about betrayal, suffering, and a brutal death.
And the details get incredibly personal. In Psalm 41, there's this heartbreaking line about being betrayed by a close friend, someone who ate my bread. This is linked directly to Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' inner circle, one of the 12 apostles, who literally shared meals with him right before turning him in.
But it doesn't just stop at betrayal by a friend. The claim is that the prophecy gets even more specific, down to the exact price of that betrayal. A specific, almost insulting number.
30 pieces of silver. The prophet Zechariah, writing centuries before, actually mentions that exact price, and that is the very amount the Gospel of Matthew says Judas was paid. The precision of that single detail is presented as, well, pretty staggering. And the details just keep piling up. The blueprint allegedly foretold that he'd be accused by false witnesses, that he'd stay silent when accused, that he'd be spit on and beaten. It's said to have predicted he'd be crucified with criminals, that soldiers would gamble for his clothes, and even this incredibly specific detail, that not a single one of his bones would be broken. The whole case is built on this mountain of very specific points.
But here's the thing. According to this prophetic blueprint, the cross wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot.
The ancient texts are also said to have predicted what would happen after his death.
This final chapter is said to have 3 key parts. First, a prophecy from Isaiah said he'd be buried with the rich, which is connected to him being placed in the tomb of a wealthy man. Second, verses from the Psalms are pointed to as predicting his resurrection, that his body wouldn't decay in the grave. And third, another psalm is said to have foretold his ascension, his return to heaven.
So, when you put it all together, the argument is this. Here is a single life, from the very beginning to the very end and even beyond, and every major step was supposedly detailed in ancient texts written over hundreds and hundreds of years.
That's what it all comes down to, really. It leaves us with this one huge provocative question to think about. What are the odds of any one person's life matching such a detailed and ancient blueprint?